exhausted, broke, and running on barely any sleep. A single dad takes a job no one else would touch. What he discovers there changes not only his life, but the life of a woman whose heart has been waiting for someone like him. Aiden's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., its shrill tone cutting through the thick fog of exhaustion that had settled over him. He rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the remnants of a night spent pacing the kitchen, calculating bills, and wondering how he would stretch his paycheck another week. Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, stirred in the bed beside him, mumbling something about a dream she couldn't remember. He kissed the top of her head, soft and warm under his lips, and whispered, "I'll get us through this, kiddo." She grinned, half asleep, and snuggled closer, her small hand slipping into his. Those moments, fleeting as they were, made the relentless fatigue bearable. Still, as he rolled out of bed and laced his worn sneakers, the weight of responsibility pressed against his chest like a physical force. One missed payment could mean the lights going out or the rent overdue. Every day felt like a balancing act over a fraying tightrope. He drove through the quiet streets, passing shuttered shops, and the early morning rush of people with their coffee cups and briefcases, each wrapped up in their own worlds. His first job at the diner demanded long hours, often leaving him sore and drained, his uniform smelling faintly of grease by the time he clocked out. The kitchen was a battlefield of clanging pans, impatient customers, and coworkers who treated him as if he were invisible. Yet he showed up day after day because Lily's small smiles, her giggles as she chased a butterfly or hid under the kitchen table pretending to be invisible, were worth every aching muscle and blistered hand. Money was never enough, but love, quiet and unwavering, filled the spaces his exhaustion carved out. It was during a particularly grueling Wednesday morning when a spilled tray sent coffee and eggs cascading across the diner floor that Aiden noticed a small, fading sign tacked to a telephone pole outside. "Help wanted. Community center. No experience needed." The edges were curled and stained from rain, but something in the words made him pause. Aiden had walked past this place hundreds of times, always noticing the peeling paint and the broken swing set in the yard. No one seemed eager to work there. Kids ran in chaotic circles, and the older volunteers often complained about the disorder. Everyone avoided it, and he couldn't blame them. But desperation gnawed at him. Bills were mounting, and the diner barely paid enough to keep their small apartment from falling behind on rent. He scribbled the number on a scrap of paper, driving away with a nervous hope clinging to his chest. That afternoon, after a double shift, Aiden dragged himself to the community center. The building smelled faintly of old paint and cleaning supplies. The office was cluttered, papers scattered in no discernible order, and a few kids sat listlessly at a table, coloring or whispering to one another. A woman behind the desk, Emma, looked up and offered a tired but genuine smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was calm, steady, and for a moment, it made Aiden feel like he could breathe without the air pressing down on him. He introduced himself, explaining his situation, his exhaustion, his need for any work he could get. She listened, nodding thoughtfully, then said, "We could use someone who's willing to try. It's not easy, But if you can handle a little chaos, we'll make it work. The first few days were overwhelming. Children shouted over one another, chairs scraped against the floor, and Aiden felt like he was drowning in a sea of responsibilities he wasn't trained for. He didn't know the names of all the kids, their stories, or their struggles. He made mistakes, dropping a stack of coloring books, misplacing a snack tray. But Emma was there, gently guiding him, offering encouragement without condescension. Slowly, he began to notice the small victories. A child who refused to speak for weeks smiled at him. Another who was always sullen laughed at his clumsy attempt to tie shoelaces. And Lily, when she came to visit after school, watched her father with awe, whispering, "You're really good at this, Dad." That tiny approval fueled him more than any paycheck ever could. Evenings were quiet, though rarely peaceful. Bills sat on the counter like small mountains, letters from the landlord, and utilities staring at him accusingly. Lily would curl up next to him on the couch, her head on his shoulder, and ask him questions about everything: why the sky was pink, why some kids didn't have shoes, why her dad seemed tired all the time. He answered the best he could, his voice gentle, sometimes faltering when he tried to hide the worry in his chest. "We're doing okay," he'd say, though he wasn't entirely sure if it was true. The weight of his responsibilities, the exhaustion, and the fear of failing Lily pressed heavily, yet there was a quiet resilience building inside him. He was a father, yes, but he was also someone learning to survive and thrive in unexpected circumstances. On weekends, the community center was chaotic in a different way. Parents came and went, some grateful, some demanding, some skeptical. Aiden quickly realized that this job wasn't about clocking hours. It was about showing up, day after day, even when it hurt, and making a small difference. One afternoon, as he helped Lily and a few other kids with an art project, Emma watched from across the room, her presence steady, grounding him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the chaos faded. He felt a strange mix of admiration and something more tender, a recognition of someone who understood, without words, the exhaustion, the love, and the hope that defined his life. He smiled at her, and she smiled back, not with judgment, but with a quiet warmth that made his chest ache with something unfamiliar, something promising. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Aiden sat at the small kitchen table, a pen in his hand, scribbling down a to-do list that seemed endless. He paused, thinking about the day, the spilled paint, the laughter, the small victories, Emma's smile, and Lily's hug. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this new job no one wanted wasn't just a necessity. Maybe it was an opportunity, not just to survive, but to grow, to connect, and to find something he didn't realize he had been searching for. He rubbed his eyes, smiling despite the exhaustion, and whispered to himself, "We'll make it. Somehow, we'll make it." The night stretched quietly around him, heavy with potential, and for once, he allowed himself to believe that life could be better, brighter, and unexpectedly beautiful. The next morning, Aiden arrived at the community center earlier than usual, the sunrise painting the walls in shades of soft gold. He carried his usual bag of supplies, a notebook with scribbled reminders, and a faint thread of hope that today might be easier Then yesterday, Emma was already there, organizing folders and checking schedules with a calm focus that made him pause for a moment. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders, catching the light, and she looked up, offering her usual gentle smile. "Morning, Aiden. Ready for another adventure?" she asked. He chuckled softly, the tension in his chest loosening a fraction. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said. Her laugh, soft and unforced, lingered in the air longer than he expected, leaving a warmth he hadn't realized he craved. The morning passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Children ran between tables, voices overlapping in a chorus of energy and excitement. Some needed help with homework, others with small conflicts, and a few simply sought attention. Aiden discovered that he could manage more than he thought, guided by Emma's patient instructions and occasional nods of encouragement. "Try asking them to explain in their own words," she suggested, leaning close to whisper. He followed her advice, and for the first time, a small breakthrough happened. A boy who had refused to participate in any activity for weeks raised his hand, a shy smile breaking across his face. Emma's eyes softened, and Aiden felt a rush of pride, not just for the boy, but for himself, for surviving, for making a difference. During a break, they sat side by side at the small staff table. They noticed the way Emma sipped her coffee thoughtfully, staring out the window at the playground where children swung and ran. "Do you ever feel like it's all too much?" he asked quietly, not wanting to intrude, but needing someone to understand. Emma tilted her head, considering him, then nodded. "Every day," she admitted, "but then you see them smile, hear their laughter, and it reminds you why you're here." Her honesty struck him. For the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe without pretending, like someone else truly understood the weight he carried. They shared stories of their lives in fragments, childhood struggles, lost opportunities, small victories, each revelation weaving a subtle thread between them. Lily arrived that afternoon, bouncing through the doors with the energy only a 7-year-old could muster. She ran straight into Aiden's arms, her laughter echoing across the room. Emma watched her with a quiet admiration, and Aiden noticed the way her smile softened, how naturally she connected with children. "You have a little whirlwind here," she said, laughing. "She's full of life," Aiden replied, his chest swelling with pride. Watching her interact with Emma, seeing the ease and warmth between them, something shifted in him. He realized that this connection, tentative and new, was more than just friendship. It was the beginning of trust, of understanding, of a possibility he hadn't allowed himself to imagine before. Over the following weeks, Aiden and Emma developed a rhythm. Mornings were filled with structured activities, afternoons with homework help and quiet reflection. During coffee breaks, they would sit and talk, sometimes about nothing, sometimes about everything. They learned about Emma's past, the heartbreak she had endured, the quiet loneliness behind her composed exterior. She learned about him, the sleepless nights, the constant juggling act to keep Lily safe and happy, the fears he carried in his chest. Conversations stretched for minutes that felt like hours, weaving layers of trust and subtle affection. He found himself looking forward to these moments more than anything else in his day, a warmth spreading through him he hadn't realized he was missing. One evening, As the center emptied and the last child waved goodbye, Emma lingered with him to tidy up. "You've changed a lot since you started," she said quietly, stacking papers in neat piles. Aiden paused, surprised. "I have?" he asked, unsure if he was ready to acknowledge it. She smiled, her eyes gentle. "You found patience, and you've learned how to care without losing yourself. That's rare." Her words struck him, a mirror reflecting the growth he hadn't noticed in himself. He felt both humility and pride, a mix that left him momentarily speechless. They stood there, cleaning in tandem, sharing quiet glances and unspoken understanding. As weeks turned into months, the bond between them deepened in ways neither expected. Lily thrived, her laughter more frequent, her confidence blossoming. She adored Emma, asking endless questions, and Emma responded with warmth and patience that reminded Aiden why he had taken the risk in the first place. The community center became more than a job. It was a place of growth, of healing, of subtle transformation. He discovered a capacity for love that extended beyond the protective bubble of fatherhood into the gentle, steady presence of someone who understood him completely. Every glance, every shared smile, every conversation added layers to their connection, weaving something fragile yet unbreakable. One chilly afternoon, as snow began to fall lightly outside, Aiden found himself walking Lily home. The streets glistened under the winter light, children's laughter echoing faintly from distant yards. Lily tugged at his hand. "Dad, do you think Emma likes you?" she asked innocently, her eyes wide and curious. He laughed softly, the sound warm against the cold air. "I think she already does, kiddo," he said, squeezing her hand. She grinned, satisfied with the answer, and they continued walking, the snow crunching softly beneath their feet. That small moment, so ordinary yet extraordinary, reminded him that life could be gentle and full, even amid struggle. That night, Aiden sat at his kitchen table, the world outside quiet and still. He looked at Lily asleep in her bed, peaceful and trusting, and thought about Emma. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe that happiness wasn't a distant dream. It was present, fragile, but real, waiting for him to nurture it. He scribbled notes about the day, small reminders to himself to be patient, to listen, to cherish the moments that mattered most. And somewhere deep in his chest, a cautious hope began to grow, a realization that love, support, and connection could be found in the most unexpected places. He leaned back in his chair, letting the quiet sink in. He thought of the chaos of the center, the laughter, the small victories, and Emma's unwavering patience. Slowly, deliberately, he allowed himself to feel something more than relief. He felt possibility, and with it, the courage to keep moving forward. He whispered softly to himself, "We are not just surviving anymore, we're living." And for the first time in months, the exhaustion felt lighter, the weight on his shoulders eased, and a small smile formed on his lips, genuine and unguarded, because for the first time, he believed that life could be better than he ever imagined. It was a Thursday morning when everything shifted. The center buzzed with energy as usual, children darting between tables, their laughter bouncing off the walls. and was helping a small group with a craft project when a commotion erupted near the entrance. One of the parents, frustrated and loud, accused a child of damaging property that wasn't his. The words stung, sharp and unfair, and the tension in the room thickened immediately. Aiden's stomach twisted, his heart racing. He knew that the parent's anger was misplaced, yet it landed squarely on his shoulders. He tried to calm the situation, speaking slowly, reasoning patiently, but the parent's face was rigid with accusation. Emma appeared beside him, her hand brushing lightly against his arm as she whispered, "Stay calm. We'll handle this together." Her presence steadied him, yet fear gnawed at his chest. One wrong move could cost him the job he had fought so hard to keep. The parent's voice escalated, drawing the attention of every child and staff member, and felt Lily squeeze his hand, a silent plea for protection and reassurance. He took a deep breath, fighting the panic that threatened to overtake him. "We can figure this out," he said, forcing calm into his tone. Emma guided him toward a quiet corner where they could speak without an audience. Her eyes were steady, full of empathy, yet Aiden felt the weight of inadequacy pressing down on him. "I can't lose this job," he muttered, his voice tight. "I can't let her down. Or Lily." Emma's hand rested on his shoulder, warm and grounding. "You're doing more than you think," she said. "Sometimes it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard." That evening, after the center emptied and the chaos settled into a quiet hum, Aiden sat on a bench outside, staring at the fading sunset. Emma joined him silently, offering no words at first, just the comfort of presence. "I'm scared," he admitted, finally letting his guard down. "Scared of failing Lily, scared of losing this, scared that I can't do it." His voice cracked on the last word, and he buried his face in his hands. Emma sat close, not pressing, not judging, just letting him be vulnerable. "It's okay to be scared," she said softly. "It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." Her words settled over him like a warm blanket, easing some of the tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. The days that followed were a careful dance between recovery and responsibility. Aiden worked harder than ever, trying to repair the small damage done by the misunderstanding, ensuring parents were heard, children were safe, and routines were restored. He relied heavily on Emma, whose calm guidance became his anchor. During breaks, they would talk, slowly peeling back layers of fear and frustration. Emma shared stories of her own past failures, times when she had felt inadequate and unseen. Each revelation drew Aiden closer, showing him that vulnerability could coexist with strength, that admitting fear didn't diminish courage. Slowly, he began to understand that opening up wasn't a weakness. It was a bridge to connection and growth. Lily noticed the change in him, sensing the tension that lingered despite his efforts to appear composed. She would curl up beside him at night, her small hand in his, whispering questions and jokes meant to lighten his mood. "Dad, are you okay?" she would ask, her eyes wide and concerned. He would smile, brushing back her hair, and say, "I'm okay, kiddo. I just had a big day." But she wasn't fooled. Her presence reminded him that honesty and openness were necessary, that protecting her didn't mean hiding his own struggles. Every hug, every laugh, every quiet moment together became a reminder that resilience wasn't solitary. It was shared, nurtured, and strengthened by those who cared for him. One rainy evening, as thunder rumbled softly in the distance, Aiden found himself confessing more than he intended. "I don't know if I can do this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, a silent promise of support. "You're stronger than you think," she replied. "You faced every day with courage. Even when it scared you, you're not alone." The honesty of her words, the way she saw him without judgment, allowed him to release years of pent-up fear and doubt. He spoke about the sleepless nights, the constant worry for Lily, the moments of despair that had haunted him for months. And for the first time, he didn't feel weak. He felt human, real, and connected. As the storm outside subsided, Aiden realized that crisis, while terrifying, had brought clarity. He saw Emma not just as a colleague or a friend, but as someone who understood the depth of his heart and the weight of his responsibilities. Their bond, forged in small acts of trust and quiet support, had grown stronger through shared vulnerability. He began to notice subtle signs of affection in her gestures, the way she lingered when helping a child, the soft glances she cast when he succeeded, the warmth in her voice during their late-night talks. Each observation deepened his awareness that love could emerge not in grand declarations, but in steady, patient presence. One night, after tucking Lily into bed, Aiden sat at the kitchen table, replaying the events of the past weeks. The crisis, though painful, had shifted something inside him. He recognized that fear and vulnerability weren't enemies. They were signals, guiding him toward honesty, connection, and growth. Emma had shown him that sharing burden didn't mean losing control. It meant finding strength in partnership. The thought brought a cautious smile to his lips. He felt a spark of hope, fragile but undeniable, that perhaps life could be more than survival. It could be meaningful, fulfilling, and shared. The following day, he arrived at the center with a renewed determination. He greeted the children with genuine warmth, knowing that small victories mattered. Emma noticed immediately, offering a quiet nod of approval. Their conversations flowed easily, alternating between laughter and shared reflection, each word building trust and deepening their connection. Lily watched them, sensing the quiet shift. Her excitement for the day mirrored in Aiden's own energy. The storm of the previous week had left marks, but it had also carved space for growth, understanding, and the possibility of something profoundly transformative. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed, she whispered, "Dad, you look happier." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I am, kiddo. I really am." She nestled into him, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed to lift. Aiden realized that vulnerability, honesty, and connection weren't just lessons for the children he cared for. They were lessons for himself. He felt the quiet stirrings of love and trust, fragile but promising, and understood that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to face it together. The crisis had tested him, shaken him, and yet it had given him something invaluable, a glimpse of what life could be when hearts were open and shared. The weeks after the crisis unfolded gently, like a river finding its way around rocks. He arrived at the community center each morning with a quiet determination, carrying the lessons of vulnerability, trust, and patience like an invisible armor. The chaos of children running, projects spilling, and parents' demands no longer felt insurmountable. He had learned that showing up fully, imperfect, tired, human, was more powerful than trying to control every moment. Emma was always nearby, her presence steady, encouraging, and unobtrusive. They had developed an unspoken rhythm, a silent understanding that extended beyond words, built on shared experiences, trust, and small acts of care. Each interaction with her, each glance or smile, reinforced the realization that he was not navigating life alone. Lily thrived in this environment. She laughed more freely, shared her excitement over little accomplishments, and began forming bonds with the other children. She adored Emma, asking endless questions and sometimes leaning against her shoulder as they worked on crafts together. Watching the two of them interact, Ian felt a surge of gratitude. Emma's patience and warmth illuminated spaces in his life he hadn't realized were dimmed by exhaustion and fear. One afternoon, as he observed Lily proudly show Emma her completed drawing, he noticed the tender smile on Emma's face and felt a sudden rush of clarity. This connection wasn't fleeting. It was grounding. It was real. And it was meant to last. Work at the center became a place of transformation for Aiden, not just in his skills, but in his outlook. He no longer approached the chaos with anxiety, but with intention and care. Conflicts were handled calmly. Setbacks were seen as opportunities to learn, and victories, both large and small, were celebrated fully. Emma's influence was subtle but profound. She guided with empathy, never forcing, always supporting. Their shared commitment to the children fostered a closeness that felt natural, unhurried, and deeply human. Eden began to understand that love and trust weren't instant. They were cultivated, nurtured in quiet moments, and consistent presence. One crisp winter morning, Aiden arrived to find Emma arranging a small display of thank you cards and drawings from the children. He paused, noticing the gentle way she moved, her focus soft yet deliberate. "They really look up to you, you know," she said without turning around. Aiden felt his chest tighten. "It's because of you," he replied. She glanced at him then, her eyes warm, unguarded, and he felt the weight of unspoken emotions pass between them. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future that included her, not as a fleeting connection, but as a partner, as someone who could share the joys and struggles of everyday life. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. That evening, after the center closed, Aiden walked home with Lily, snow dusting their coats, and the world quiet around them. She chattered about her day, about friends, about stories they had made up in the art room, her energy spilling over like sunlight. Aiden listened, smiling, letting the warmth of her presence fill the spaces that had once felt empty. At home, he prepared dinner with care, noticing the small rhythms of life that felt steady and comforting. Lily setting the table, their laughter echoing in the kitchen, the mundane tasks becoming moments of connection. In the soft glow of the kitchen light, he felt a quiet certainty. Life could be gentle and fulfilling, and it didn't require perfection to be beautiful. Days later, a quiet snow fell outside as Aiden and Emma worked on the afternoon program. The children were busy with a winter craft, and the room hummed with content energy. At a lull, Aiden glanced at Emma, her hands busy with glitter and glue, and his heart stirred. He realized he didn't want to hide his feelings any longer. Emma, he began, voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. I don't want this us to be just moments in the chaos. I want to be part of your life, really. With Lily, with you. Every day. Emma looked up, her eyes soft, glimmering with a mixture of surprise and emotion. She took a deep breath, a quiet smile forming, and reached out to rest her hand on his. I've been hoping you'd say that, she whispered. The next few days unfolded like a dream come true. In Lily and Emma spent more time together outside the center, walking in the park, baking cookies, and sharing quiet evenings where laughter and stories. Every interaction deepened their bond, each gesture, however small, affirming that connection and love were built in steady, shared presence. Lily's eyes sparkled with delight as she witnessed the friendship and affection between her father and Emma, her little heart sensing the warmth and security that now enveloped their family. In watch, grateful beyond words, realizing that this life, messy and imperfect as it was full of joy he hadn't known he could feel. The community center, once a place of chaos and uncertainty, had become a symbol of resilience and transformation. Aiden and Emma's partnership created a ripple effect. Children felt safer, parents felt heard, and even coworkers found inspiration in their patience and dedication. Aiden recognized that the job he had once taken out of desperation had become a conduit for love, growth, and meaningful connection. Every challenge, every misstep, and every quiet victory contributed to the larger tapestry of life they were weaving together. One snowy evening, as the three of them returned from a walk, Aiden paused outside their apartment building. Lily tugged his hand, eager to show him the tiny snowman she had built. Emma stood beside him, her smile warm, eyes reflecting the soft glow of streetlights. And knelt, holding Lily close. I love our life, he said softly. It's not perfect, but it's ours, and I'm so glad we have each other. Emma rested her hand on his shoulder, squeezing gently. It's more than I ever imagined, she replied, and it's just the beginning. That night, Ian lay awake for a few moments, reflecting on the journey. He thought about the exhaustion, the fear, the small victories, and the moments of connection that had led them here. Life was still full of responsibilities, bills, and sleepless nights, but it was also full of love, laughter, and hope. He realized that the courage to show up, the willingness to be vulnerable, and the openness to trust had changed everything. He whispered to himself, we are not just surviving, we are building something real, something lasting. The warmth of that thought settled over him like a soft blanket, and for the first time in years, he felt completely at peace. Aiden, Lily, and Emma continued to navigate life together, each day a testament to resilience, love, and human connection. Small gestures, a shared meal, a quiet conversation, a hug after a long day became anchors in a world that could feel chaotic and uncertain. They discovered that happiness wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, being present, and cherishing the moments that mattered most. And in that quiet, steady rhythm, Aiden realized that the job no one wanted had brought him everything he didn't know he was searching for: trust, connection, and the transformative power of love. And looked out the window, watching the first light of dawn spill softly across the city. Lily was still asleep, her small breaths even and peaceful, and Emma was quietly arranging breakfast in the kitchen, humming a tune that made his chest feel lighter than it had in years. He realized how far they had come, not just surviving, but truly living. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every chaotic moment at the community center had led them here. He had found love in the most unexpected place, a partner who understood him, a daughter whose laughter filled the house, and a life that was richer and fuller than he could have ever imagined. The warmth of this new chapter wrapped around him like a soft embrace. Ain smiled, thinking about the journey from exhaustion and doubt to hope and connection. He understood now that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to face life fully, to open one's heart, and to trust in the people who mattered most. Emma's hand found his, and Lily stirred, sensing the quiet happiness surrounding them. In that moment, he knew that love, patience, and shared effort could transform even the hardest paths into journeys of joy and fulfillment. Life wasn't perfect, and challenges would come again, but Aiden, Lily, and Emma had each other, and that made all the difference. Together, they had discovered the profound truth that even the smallest acts of kindness, the willingness to show up, and the courage to trust could change everything. If this story touched your heart, remember, even in the most unexpected places, love and hope can appear. Showing up, being patient, and embracing vulnerability can lead to life-changing connections. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that life can surprise us in the most beautiful ways. Single dad took a job no one wanted and found the woman who'd change his life.